Hey, what's going on? I'm Nick G. This is my couch. I'm coming on today because I want to talk about what I've been writing this week. Let's recap. I liked doing it last week. I thought it was fun. It gave me an opportunity to talk about my stuff without the actual words that were, on the written page. Um, I'm going to share my screen and then I'm going to kind of play out a little bit, piece by piece. So I'm sharing my screen boop, right now. Yeah. All right. So the first piece that I'm talking about is y'all know me. I'm a Star Trek head. So for me, a lot of things that I process, they come through that Star Trek filter. For myself, I feel like I can go knocking on people's doors and say, "Hey, have you heard about today's news?" And then show them a couple episodes, maybe a small story arc within Star Trek. And in doing that, I can teach the events of the day. With this incident, I wrote about Joran Dax. Joran Dax is you would have to go to Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Deep Space Nine. It takes place in a space station. In it, it's introduced in the Next Generation, but you really don't explore the Trill until you get to Deep Space Nine. Basically, you have the Trill, which are a race of people, but then you have a symbiont system, which they call it like a worm, a slug, all kinds of detrimental things. But there's this entity that combines with an individual, and the person that's chosen. There's an extreme process for how they choose these people, academies, and all that. But when a person is joined with the symbiont, you have the memories of all the people that the symbiont was connected to before, as will people after you have your memories as well. I wrote this about Donald Trump. Um, the whole point of Joran Dax is there's an episode dedicated to him, and Joran Dax is of all of the memories that the symbiont has. Um, in this one symbiont, they'd purged the memories of this one host. There was a host for 6 months. During that time, he was a musician. He was a little, and he killed people. He was a murderer. He had that seething need, and so the episode is exploring who this individual was, giving depth to the Dax character, played by Terry Farrell. Jadzia Dax. Jadzia Dax came after Curzon Dax. Jadzia Dax came before Urzi. I'm drawing a blank. I just know I didn't like the next Dax. I wasn't really a fan. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on that. I literally had the word in my mouth before I opened it. Anyway, I'm writing about Joran Dax. The whole point of the piece is Joran Dax was evident, and that's why the committee got rid of it. Joran Dax was evident that anybody could join. Anybody could be a part of, um, you know, the symbiote program. And in it, the episode it shows this was bad. Jadzia ends up Esri Dax. Esri Dax came after Jadzia. Um, so in the Dax process of this particular symbiont is named Dax. When you join, you become your name Dax. Curzon became Curzon Dax. Jadzia became Jadzia Dax. Esri eventually became Esri Dax. I don't remember the name of the person in Starfleet Academy, which is the next Dax that I know about. I'm into the visual stuff. I'm not so much into like the books, just because fan fiction is what it is. So in it, I talk about in this piece. Let me introduce you to Joran Dax. I talk about the Star Trek universe a little bit. I speak on who, uh, this is a picture that I'm showing right here. That's Joran Dax, the individual. And so what I'm doing is I'm saying this man is a mistake. There's a whole committee that decides how to choose somebody. There's rigmarole to run through. There's hoops to jump through. And in the end of it, this man still got uh, chosen to host the symbiont. They realized they made a mistake. So what I'm doing is I'm comparing Joran Dax to Donald Trump. That's the trailer for the episode Deep Space Nine Equilibrium. Um, Donald Trump uh, is like Joran Dax. We have the exalted president of the United States. We have um, the process with which we choose them. And I'm saying this as an American narration, not actual truth. The truth is the primary system was developed as two private parties choosing the lily white candidate. Well, at the time, it was just the Democrats, but the lily white candidate. So this white person who was in favor of property ownership would be the candidate, and not whatever capable citizen was chosen by way of virtue. So the way that I compare Joran Dax to Donald Trump, I even gave him the little trill markers over here. I think that's funny. Um, the way that I compare Joran Dax to Donald Trump is they aren't finding the oops and getting rid of it. What they're doing is they found the oops, and the people who see the oops are exploiting the oops. Everything going on right now, while our media is ha 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 and kikiing over, dumb shit, his stupid ass makeup, his stupid hair, something Pete Hegseth said, you know what I mean? Something that Donald Trump did. Ha ha, we're all laughing. The truth is the fact patterns in the things that are happening are intentional. You know what I'm saying? They're intentional. Right now, the topical thing is they're putting ICE in airports and they're not paying TSA. Let's look at that without the dialogue. Ha ha, kiki. Let's look at that without the dialogue. They are defunding our infrastructure and our highly overvalued personal army that serves specifically Joran Dax, the president. They're overfunded. So they're replacing our infrastructure with loyalty. So it's not, oh no, what do we do? They're hurting Americans. They're taking Americans' money. They're overworking and stressing Americans out. And they're putting their personal army at our entry and exit points so that we can't come and go as we please. My theory is the next thing that's going to come is our ability to interact with each other. Unless you're a wonk, the piece is, I guess when I'm writing to get words out of my head. Once I put them down, I don't think them anymore, if that makes any sense. I will grind. Once I put that operation out, and I can physically see it in a tangible way somewhere else, I'm done with it. So I just wanted to get this out of my head. I was looking at two different markets when I'm speaking to this. I'm speaking to the Star Trek geekdom, who will be like, oh, how novel, you did the thing, and on the other hand, I'm trying to explain to the people who have Donald Trump in their mouth all the time, and I'm telling you, it's a stank flavor. But the people that have Donald Trump in their mouth all the time, they don't always have the grander perspective. There's actually a piece that I'm writing right now about Generation X. Gen X. My piece started as white people don't have culture because the television usurped our community. And in doing that, I kind of came to a point where I was like, yeah, that's why everything that I say comes out in a movie clip or a sitcom line. I always start, have you seen? And that's why, because that's the culture that we were given. They took away our historical lineage. They took away our heritage, mine being European and all that stuff. And they took that stuff away and instead gave us this uniform. I mean, that's how, every time you have a series come back, you know what I mean? When I'm talking about appointment TV series, you have the new series comes back. They explain the difference between the last episode of last season and the first episode of this season. Right. Shortly after that, you're going to have the Halloween episode. Shortly after that, you're going to have the Thanksgiving/Christmas episode. No, Thanksgiving is going to stand on its own. Next episode is going to be a Christmas episode. Next episode is going to be like a New Year's, will I find my love? The next episode is going to be, they really don't, not that they don't do the St. Patrick's Day, not that they don't do the Easter. The next one is going to be like getting out of school. If it's like a high school kind of theme, you know what I'm saying? There's eventually going to be that episode where they're, oh, I got to go to college. But what I just named, without naming a script, without naming a title, is how we were conditioned in America. I mean, I'm going to be 49 this year, so that's almost 50 years of recognizing the conditioning of every series has that Christmas, that Halloween, and you know, you think Halloween, they in Europe, they were carving up turnips. You know what I mean? You think about Christmas, and here, keep Christ in Christmas is the message, but then visually, it's Santa everywhere. Do you know what I'm saying? And so that's part of the blending of American culture that has no, it has no roots, it has no anything. We just do it, you know. And even now, Christmas, and I know from working in, you know, retail stuff, Christmas is starting in like October. You know what I mean? They're putting Christmas things behind the Halloween masks that are going to be taken down, and that's because it's no longer about tradition. It's no longer about the American citizen and their culture. It's about the dollar, and they present it to us as, oh, obviously the obligatory, you know. Anyway, finishing off about this piece about Joran Dax. Donald Trump is in the position that he's in because he was put there by people who realize the criminal instincts that he has. They count on him being fallible. They count on him being who he is. I'm going to go into a little bit later where I compare Donald Trump to Eddie Arkadian from The Last Dragon, and that's basically it. He's a 2-bit hustler who went from 2-bit. By linking with Russia, he became 8-bit. And now that he's the American president, it's like somebody gave this 2-bit hustler an Unreal Engine to make his crime real. That's my perspective on that. Yeah, that's it. I wrote my piece. Let me introduce you to Joran Dax. I'm introducing a Star Trek character with a concept, but I'm attributing it to Donald Trump, who's in there as an exploit. Coming back to my chat. Hey, Brandon, I bet, just like the rest of the guys that have too much money for their conscience, I wouldn't be surprised if they were trying to put somebody's intellect into a body like Westworld or that kind of shit. Shayla, that's exactly it. When I don't see the iconography. You know what I'm saying? My head interprets a very different concept of Donald Trump. I don't see, hey, Donald Trump. I did that like a Goomba because that's what he aspires to be. I see, growing up, 80s, we spent time outside. You know what I'm saying? There would be a point at like 10 o'clock where you would be told, go outside, the door's shut. You can't come back in until those lights come back on in the street. And then you do your little nose press against the screen. But can I get a drink of water? I gotta use the bathroom. Any excuse to get back in. And then you get stuck doing dumb shit. Well, if you're gonna be inside, you gotta stay inside. But what Donald Trump makes me think of is not, you know, like a Goomba where you had like organized crime. I hear, if you remember The Sandlot, they had that dude. Yeah. That's what I think of. I get a neighbor guy that I talk to, and when I come back in the house from talking to him, I always explain that I can tell he's a liar because he talks fast and he talks too much. I said his tell is he repeats himself. Yeah, we just gonna go try and get a bag. All right, man. Hey, we gonna hook up. We just gonna go try and get a bag. And it's like, you know, that dude's running off with your money. You know, that dude is pinching from whatever bag you are going to get. You know what I'm saying? As soon as you hear him, that's my interpretation of Donald Trump. I don't hear this knowledgeable person. I haven't from day one. I've heard, this street kid who doesn't get attention, who wants to give himself a posture greater than he is. He's a yeah. He's a corner hustler. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Come back into this alley real quick. Every unicorn, you want a unicorn? I got a unicorn. And then he's selling you a unicorn while you're getting blackjacked and your kidneys are taken. That's Donald Trump. That's Donald Trump from jump. You know what I'm saying? Um, let's see. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna look at my next piece. Shoop up. Shoop boop. Bam. All right. My next piece that I wrote, I've been writing a lot this week. So the next piece that I wrote, I was actually watching Wajahat Ali, and it had me kind of thinking of Kyle Kalinske. It kind of had me thinking of, I'm trying to think like, fuck, like 6 months ago, my media diet was so different. I was all about like the YouTube bros, you know what I mean? So I was Kyle Kalinske, I was Keith Edwards. As a matter of fact, when I came to Substack, the first thing that I did after being so excited, I actually messaged Keith Edwards and I was like, my guy, come here. This is new journalism. And I'm at a point now where I actually refer to him as the fuck boy because that's what he does. He kind of just gets on, makes these videos. He talks about it's not entertaining. It's not informational. It just isn't pressing. You know what I'm saying? I want news. I want Allison Gill level, Mueller report granular details, and stuff like that. I don't, and this is why I'm tired of Midas. The same thing. They just keep rattling off headlines. This is devastating. Brian Tyler Cohen, he'll be like, former prosecutor rolls Donald Trump. And then it's just the same people he always has on talking shit, saying the same things they always do. That's not what happened. Donald Trump goes down his thing. Whoever does his thing, this poll is, I have a thing about polling. You know what I mean? If I may. My media diet is different. So I was listening to Watch, and something that all the progressive, as I call them now, fuck boys, they go on with their headlines. But Watch was talking about Groypers, and he's bringing up Tucker Carlson and how this is this impending thing. And something that I felt for a long time is, and I am so plugged in that I get burned out where I just don't want information. If you see me posting on Substack and all of a sudden I'm posting house music videos, of DJ sets and comic book runs, that's just me burned out with listening to people chew on words and saying nothing. You know what I mean? It's all fat, no proteins. And I kind of get over it. And so that's a lot of what that does. Specifically Midas. They'll have an hour show and then they'll have a new something every 45, 90 minutes. You know what I mean? And yeah, this is us. Welcome to the day. And what we did. And then they'll show a recap. And it's like, dude, when I'm watching a series, as soon as I see it's a recap episode, boop, I skip to the next. We aren't trying to move the plot. You're trying to sell the previous shit. That's me. So I started writing this piece, Progressive Media Loves Groypers. They do. They do. I don't hear them on informational news. I don't hear about them on local news. One of the first things I did when I started getting into YouTube as a media source was I looked up the top station in all 50 states, territories, and I started following the top two. So I started getting local news. Boy, does it suck around 6 and 5 o'clock. But because everybody's trying to get their shit in. But for the most part, when news is breaking, I'm seeing actual stuff. I'm very plugged in. I don't hear about Groypers. I don't hear about Groypers. I don't hear about Groypers. I don't hear about Tucker Carlson. I don't hear about Charlie Kirk. And why is that? Because the majority of right-wing media is bot farmed, is echoed, and is given platforms to make it seem like it's greater than it is. I'll give you an example. Not of them, but of rap. Boogie Down Productions. In my head, when I'm learning about the Bridge Wars, dun 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 dun. I'm learning about the Bridge Wars, and I hear about Boogie Down Productions. Now, Boogie Down Productions was KRS-One, Scott LaRock, and D Nice, and Miss Melody. That's 4 people. As I'm listening to the Bridge Wars between Boogie Down Productions and the Juice Crew, the bridge is over, the bridge is over, bum, bum. The bridge is over, the bridge is over. I thought the Juice Crew and Boogie Down Productions was 2 like equal mass like groups. I mean, here I am, white kid in the 80s, and my concept of gangs was like Breaking 2, Turbo dancing on the ceiling with a broom. I don't know. So I thought that Boogie Down Productions was this mass group of people. I know now D Nice at in his teens had made just enough money to be independent. He rented an apartment. He slept on his clothes as a bed. You know what I mean? So this interpretation from this distributed album, from these videos I'm seeing extremely knowledgeable people with extreme power who are using their voice to move groups. And it's 3 dudes, 4 people. One sleeps on his coat in an apartment with no furniture. You know what I'm saying? So that's my example of what's going on with the Groypers. There's so much conversation about it, but it isn't a mass thing. Think about this. We can't get the Iran truth out. We can't get the Palestinian truth out. Nobody's hearing it. How are these alleged fringe people making that breakthrough when everybody's tuning out? I don't follow politics, but they do follow the media bomb headline for the day. The Groypers aren't the media headline for the day. Now, Groypers, they associate with, as I understand it, I do not know any personally. As I understand the Groypers, and this is another thing, Nick Fuentes, I shouldn't know his name. His show is not big enough that it's in competition with any other shows. This man is not real. This man is not real. This is a hyper exposed individual who doesn't have the influence that we purport him to, who actually is the biggest customer of this type of media. Progressives, the ones that want to hate watch, the ones that want to keep an eye on the bad guy. So the beginning of every Nick Fuentes show is pushed by bots. Not that you don't have, genuine grassroots interest, but it's pushed by bots from other countries, of course. And that's who's pushing this to get that foot out there. So people are seeing it and we're like, oh no, look at this. So every time I hear progressive people, Kyle Kulinski has dedicated whole ass shows to this man. You know what I'm saying? What's happening is we are the knee jerk to the out. I give the same example when I'm talking about the FCC thing with Stephen Colbert. James Tallarico knew he was not going on that show. They did the whole thing recorded as a gimmick with the knowledge that this is what is happening. It was a gimmick. It was an op. They did the thing. They created headlines the day before elections votes started to go in. Mail-in. Early voting, I mean. So, it's all strategy. We are being played. We're being played, and we're being played by our own influence. You know what I'm saying? I think about the bowler hat guy in Meet the Robinsons. He was just trying to get his revenge of his life. He didn't realize he was the tool being used that was going to enslave humanity. The bowler hat guy, Groob. My mental image when I need coffee is him looking at his juice box, looking at a coffee, throwing away the juice box, grabbing old girl's coffee and boop, pounding it. To me, that's Groob. Back to Nick Fuentes, who we shouldn't know his name. My whole point in this piece is that um, progressives love their bad guy. In the piece, I go on about how Puritans back in the day, they would the Puritans back in the day, they'd go to church not to hear about their soul being cleansed, but they would actually be going to hear the hell and damnation. They weren't going to be saved, and the preacher knew that. The preacher knew that because they didn't people that are saved don't come back. People who are facing impending doom return to get their wound repackaged and healed. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the ways I feel that's the Groyper thing. So Groypers, as I understand it, is they're Nazi oriented. They do not like women because women are succubus who steal their soul, their energy, the whatever. They kind of hang around with other dudes, and while they're wearing their dudely stuff in their personal and private space, they kind of twink out. They're called cat boys, as I understand it. So I made this pun by having Nick Fuentes as a cat boy. I think that's funny. Yeah, so that's my piece on that. I blame Wajahat specifically in the sense that Wajahat Ali brings up the Groypers all the time when he's talking about Tucker Carlson. My argument is, while Tucker Carlson does have a media base because he himself has been a franchise for actual years, the Groyper movement does not. The Republicans in New York who are Nazi texting and all that stuff, they are not. If it didn't make headlines where we can see them, it's not making cultural headlines anywhere. It's just not. We are presenting our own bad guy. If I can give you an example, Israel funds Hamas through Qatar. Bibi Netanyahu funds Hamas through Qatar. So he's fighting these bad guys, using these bad guys as an excuse to do all this stuff. The whole time he was like the Harlem Globetrotters playing against the Washington Generals, knowing that the Generals are always going to lose. Now that we're in Iran, that's not the case. And they're fighting an actual bad guy. Hoo-hoo! All right, so I'm back into the chat so we can talk about this. Isla Dax, yes, played by Tawny Newsome. Oh, bro, Midas is trash. Midas is just straight trash. And they're taking over our Substack space, and I have a problem with that. And Shayla, I'm just going to say about this, and I have posted about Sarah Longwell and James Tallarico, I believe, more than anybody. Yes, the Tallarico thing was an op. But after that, his money bomb didn't come from progressives. I write another piece about that. But it didn't come from progressives in New York and California, which is where his funding comes from. It came from right-wing PACs, people, individuals, boom, boom, boom. And that's what they're. And I know I just spent the last few days watching all my favorite people geek out. The Bulwark had a live thing, and Tallarico was in on it. They were in Texas, and they made him seem like this deity. Yeah, I watch the Bulwark. I watch Midas. I watch all of the things, but it's more like in contrast, because when I'm watching actual nutrient news, I watch Midas and the like to see what comes out. Adam Klasfeld tied to Midas is money. Katie Fang tied to Midas is money. Allison Gill, I have my personal thing where I will no longer support that woman, Allison Gill. Her product itself is phenomenal. You know what I'm saying? And as soon as I see an MSW product, I know it's going to be Nutrient. I know it's going to be Bank. I just, as one individual, will not support that particular individual financially in any way. Um, yeah. So Shayla, I just want to say straight up out loud, between you and Jason Odell, I have been in love with your art. Your absolute, anybody can stand in a spot and take a picture of still life. You all are capturing the actual life while looking at the still life, which still life is the representation of action and existence and ideas. But it's the movement that you guys are capturing in the life of that area that I am just, I'm in love. Oh, and that one, Shayla, you had that one stained glass image that has been the absolute daydream in my head because it is so perfect. It's so perfect. It's like you could almost like just say, "Hey AI, give me this," and it is that, and it is exact. And you're standing in a very unique place, taking a very unique picture through a lens that your eye saw, your brain interpreted, and no matter what I see and what I interpret, the cottage industry is what you thought that caught that. Absolutely amazing. I'm just amazed with y'all's trip over there in Spain. Um, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna go over to my next piece that I've been writing. I've been writing a lot, and it's not like I'm just sitting there like hackety, 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 hackety. I'll be writing, and then as I'm writing, I'll have a thought, and I'll be, hey, let's explore this a little bit, and I'll just quick to take a note, start a new article, and I'll start kind of taking note, and then all of a sudden I'm looking for illustrations, and all of a sudden I'm like, dude, I'm done. I was editing over here. And then it's weird because I'm going back from this frame of thought to the thought that spurned it. You know what I mean? And I'm like, do I need to make these edits or should I? Yeah, writing's so fun. Like I'm just dumping stuff out of my head and through my fingers, and people are reading it, and I'm like, yeah. My next piece is kind of a pop culture commentary. Um, when I see the New Line Cinema thing, I immediately start thinking about Freddy Krueger. I mean, when I see the blue screen and I see the New Line Cinema, I hear the Freddy Krueger music. Interesting Freddy Krueger side quest. Kid and Play did the movie House Party. The movie House Party came about because DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince did a song called Nightmare on My Street without New Line Cinema's permission. They were big. The song blew up because it was part of their album. And they made a deal, which actually ended up being an agreement to do movies. Fresh Prince and Jeff, they ended up doing something else. And that contract signing ended up going to the production, which was the Hudlin brothers and Kid and Play. And that was where, you first saw like Martin Lawrence. There were other, like Groove Beach Hill was in it. Full Force were the security. The cool thing about Full Force is Full Force put on Sheila E. Sheila E? Yeah, The Glamorous Life. She was in with Prince and all them also. I see my house is woken up. Yeah, so that was, one of the things that I was thinking about. That was my side quest with Freddy Krueger. Nightmare on My Street. So he kills children. He's a murderer. He gets acquitted. People kill him. The people whose children he was killing and murdering and hurting, they kill him. They burn him in a house. Nancy Thompson's the hero of the movie one. The franchise is this child killer, child murderer, absolute bad guy, And now in 2026, Halloween time, we go to our places of Halloween, and we buy masks and outfits, and we emulate this child murderer who was killed for killing children. And that's the literal franchise. And that was the piece that I wrote about this. My whole concept is we worship Freddy Krueger, we put his name on stuff. How come the hero of the movie never got that kind of franchise? And I kind of explored that kind of thing. It would have made for a different world. It would have made for a different iconography where maybe more movies wouldn't have been made. But I find it absolutely fascinating as we're unlocking all this Epstein stuff. We were conditioned. And like I said, I'm writing a piece about Generation X, whereas we may have lost our cultural language, but we were given a channel guide for which is we can speak to each other. And this is one of those things. Everybody watched all the movies. Everybody watched the 10 movies that came out during a summer, and everybody had that catalog of knowledge. That's why we still quote Adam Sandler. You know what I mean? That's why I still talk about the wheat song, talking about Pauly Shore. My whole premise on this was we've been worshiping the bad guy for a long time. And it's almost like a daddy kink where you look up to Stockholm Syndrome. You look up to the worst parts of us. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, but going back to the Epstein thing, we're also watching, I watched the America's Top Model thing, which to me, I never watched the show. Watching the documentary, watching the playback, it reminds me of the Joe Schmo show, where like the whole thing's a work, but one dude wasn't in on it. It also reminds me VH1 had a show called The White Rapper Show. And at the time I was like, I love this because they're making them find stoops that are relevant. They made them go to Sedgwick Avenue where Cool Herc was spinning, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff. And, to me, I was like, this is great. I know now, white people were the punchline. MC Search was hired to host it. He wasn't like involved. And so what we got out of it was a punchline. And so while I'm watching America's Top Model, that's how I see it. I can't believe that y'all didn't realize it was a joke the whole time. And I feel bad for the people involved. I feel terrible for the people involved. It's a punchline. We watched that thing about the show All That, and we talk about Amanda Bynes and we talk about all the kid touching. I always want to say Corey Feldman is owed an apology whenever that kind of stuff comes up because the Epstein files talk about trying to recruit Britney Spears for some mind fuckery and, biological stuff. And, you know what I'm saying? There's a reason we were conditioned to accept Freddy Krueger. You know what I mean? There's a reason that we're conditioned to know that the music industry, the modeling industry, the movie industry is just exploitation of young people. Exploitation of young people. There isn't anything else. There's the exploitation of young people. And me being a house music head, one of the most heartbreaking things for me is the house music party as a concept is one of the number one places that people go to abduct other people. There's people everywhere. People are fucked up. You know what I'm saying? There's noise, there's music. You can't hear the dysfunction when the dysfunction happens. Okay, so I'm going to go over to my next piece. What is my next piece? I had a quick... My next piece is me. I was just kind of playing around as an idea because I heard Donald Trump talking about, taking Cuba, just taking it. And it got me thinking, it's like, man, he's really trying to roll up on Cuba like we did on Omaha Beach on D-Day. You know what I mean? So I kind of entertained that. What I did learn in all of it is that Cuba's been planning for this shit like since the Bay of Pigs. They are waiting for that D-Day invasion. They are waiting for that moment where physical troops are coming in because that's no longer coming into a shore with an open beach. I think about what's the God, it's a common thing, not Gears of War, Modern Warfare. The game now is Modern Warfare. Originally, it was you're doing historical battles. Like I remember landing on Omaha Beach. I remember fighting my way through stuff. And it's a video game and it was historical and I was invested. But when it turned into kill, I don't have that hunger to make things dead. Even my big game when I'm playing Grand Theft Auto games is I get a kick out of following the rules because when you stop at every red light, when you stop at every stop sign, everybody else starts crashing out on each other and it's very well worth it. Yeah, I'm trying to play Gears of War, Modern Warfare. It's not Gears of War though. Anyway, my whole piece on this, it was kind of just a quick brain blurb, but I wanted to express to anybody that could read it. Cuba's ready for us. If we are only going to dead ass just bomb from the air, shoot from ships, that's the only way that we can wipe out Cuba in order to take it because they're ready to fight. I mean, they're ready for some Viet Cong shit. Yeah, coming back to the chat. Man, I just want to appreciate all y'all in here. I see people in chats with bigger numbers and it just turns into a big pick me fest. I know that when people hop in and they see somebody with an orange check hop in, all of a sudden they geek out and it's like they take away from the conversation while they're trying to pick me to somebody. I know I really enjoyed being in Natasha K's live yesterday. I mean, the dialogue was very contemporary driven as far as like news and stuff like that. But the real deal was just that dialogue between viewers and involved people at any time. That's kind of my goal. So this next piece, Sean Spicer's amazing claim. I was reading this article by Elisa Valdez Rodriguez, The Method in the Makeup, Why Trump Looks the Way He Does. To me, I think this is such a diabolical article because it explains this is a gimmick. This is a work. He's doing it. He's doing this to throw us off. Wait a second. What are we doing? Yeah. Okay. So this is the article that I had read. The Method in the Makeup. Why did Trump looks the way he does? And I'm not just gonna give it away. You know, obviously I want you to give this individual the clicks and the hearts that they deserve. So I'm gonna kind of talk briefly about it. It's a gimmick. It's a work. It's to throw you off. You know what I'm saying? Everything he does, even if this man isn't intentionally doing it as a conscious person, he's doing it and it's having the effect, which leads me to my piece that I wrote called Sean Spicer's Amazing Claim. In Sean Spicer's Amazing Claim, I compare him to the Joker. We look at the Joker like he's mad. In exploration of being a comic book fan as I am, you realize the Joker is neurodivergent. He's putting on this show. But the real shit's going on somewhere else. You know what I mean? And that's how Bruce Wayne figures it out and Batman solves the whatever because he's read the distraction. That's what we have. We have a president who's a distraction. I'm tying in Elisa Valdez Rodriguez's piece with my opening. My actual piece is about Sean Spicer. When he gave his speech about the largest crowds, he wasn't talking about the crowd. In fact, he wasn't stating anything historical. He wasn't trying to dispute facts. He was a symbol. He was a communication. I say that all the time, that everything is about communication. Communication isn't I say a word, beep, beep, the word triggers. Words are limited. Words are limited. When we're communicating, we're defining words as we use them. Most of the times when we use the communicated word, we're using a template of uh, of information. We're using a template of knowledge. Every word has locked in it a meaning because we've been conditioned through communities to use this. What Sean Spicer did, he was using a different language and he was speaking to a different people. He was using body language. He was using presence to signal to people, this is how it's going to work. This is a declaration. This is not me talking about a crowd size. This is me saying, you need to say these things in order to get into our door. If this was Leisure Suit Larry, the video game, Sean Spicer walked out there and said, everybody, the password is Ken sent me. Now that's a deep pop culture cut. So that's my whole point in this piece. Of course, I want you to read it. But jumping into a lot of the stuff that I am writing, it's important to look back at the stuff that I have written because a lot of it's inspiration and prespiration. Is prespiration a word? I don't know. I just made it up. You know what I mean? It's the stuff that when I look back at it, I know that this begot this, begot this. Yeah, that's my Sean Spicer. I always insert my own jokes that are not explained in the thing, that are not. This is my Sean Spicer image. I actually got the inspiration of this image. There's an episode of Batman the Animated Series in which Joker has a best friend now, who Joker, the guy drives by him, shakes off the Joker, and the Joker's like, yeah? And then he lets him go. He goes, I'm going to let you go, but you owe me a favor. And this dude owed the Joker a favor and went on with his life, knowing that any minute he could, and be accosted by the Joker. And that's essentially what this image is. It's Sean Spicer owing the Joker a favor. I thought it was funny. That's what I do. I make myself jokes. I'm going into, hey, thanks for noticing my haircut. I was looking and I was like, how is my head getting this big? I was starting to look like a 70s throwback. Like I need to get those big rimmed, thick glasses like they wear and everything. Start dressing like Mr. Roper. Yeah. So I'm going to my next piece, which is my next piece. Yeah. Jesus, Job, and the Prodigal Son. This is just kind of like a personal piece. I'm going to start a Jesus, Job, and Prodigal Son theme of pieces, like a series, I guess. That's the Venn diagram for which I rule my life. I have 3 circles. I have Jesus, Job, and the Prodigal Son. The Prodigal Son is kind of my catch-all bucket because sometimes you could be the pig, sometimes you could be the son itself, sometimes you could be the father who needs no explanation. Job is very specific. You had it. You lost it. Where's your faith in getting it back? My Jesus part is when I get caught in my confidence, when I am in a role of myself, where I'm feeling my piety, when I know that what I'm saying is the real thing, the right thing, that's when I'm in that Jesus Venn diagram. At no point am I a deity or anything like that. So I wrote this about myself. I recount when I was driving taxi. I had a 2010 Cadillac DTS. At the one of my busiest points, I had 10 seniors from a high school class in that vehicle, 11 people, including myself, and it was almost bottomed out. But hey, when you're making money, You do what you can to make the money. But anyway, I drove rideshare. That was my vessel. That was my house. That was my escape. That was kind of my cocoon. I went into my rideshare experience as a caterpillar, and I came out like a butterfly or something fun. Um, so I wrote about that. I wrote about a midnight session where my friend had called me and I had nothing. I was at the end of my rideshare experience. I had nothing. I had literally just turned everything off out of distress and said, I'll figure it out tomorrow. And then my phone lit up. And this dude I barely spoke to, barely even liked, messaged me. And he said, hey, I got a room. And it was so random, so out of the blue. It really made me believe and like kind of open up my faith that there's bigger things in the works. I read a little bit about that. My piece is called Jesus, Job, and the Prodigal Son. Today I Am Job is my secondary. Like I say, I'm definitely going to do a series as I diary about myself. I'm going to drop out right now. I may come back in later and talk about the rest of my pieces. I see my house woke up, and I feel like I'm stealing time for myself when I do these kind of things. But I want to appreciate and recognize everybody that did come into the chat. I appreciate your interaction. I encourage you to go to my page and read my stuff. I'm not just like whipping it out. I see some stuff where, and I'm not criticizing anybody's. We're all educating. We're all educators as we write. But I see a lot of stuff, and as soon as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, that's a Chat GPT, or oh, that's a Claude. What I do when I write, no matter, and I utilize AI a lot myself in the sense that I compare my thoughts to gas, I compare my words to liquid, I compare secondary teaching as to making something solid. So it's gases, liquids, and solids. I have like not comprehension problems. My mind's a fucking trap. What I have is when I read, I tune the fuck out. You know what I'm saying? It's like I see words. So I utilize a lot of AI to bend and stretch ideas so I can easily understand them. So I do use Grok. I do use ChatGPT. I do use Claude. But when I do them, it's more me using that Jack Kerouac stream of consciousness. Usually you'll see it just like blank out. In Claude, I will actually see when I'm hacking into a text, go into a separate piece that gets uploaded because I put so much. What I'm doing is I'm making order of things. So that's what I'm using ChatGPT and Claude and all that for. I see people's stuff that's just like, they put it here, copy and paste. They thought it was good. Cool. That's kind of no difference than just sharing a link and expecting somebody else to read. You haven't interpreted and comprehended it enough to have these kind of dialogues. You know what I mean? If I can't talk about it, I'm not writing about it. And that's me. Like I've had a piece that I've been working on, where I'm trying to recognize the couple system. You know what I mean? Donald Trump, for each of his wives, at least the first and the latest, they were given to him. They were an op. He's the mark. Charlie Kirk was an op, was the mark. Erica Kirk was the op. You know what I'm saying? What was the other one? Jared Kushner and Ivanka. They're kind of interesting in the sense that they are both the mark. They are both the op. You know what I'm saying? And I find that absolutely fascinating. If we were talking about the New World Order, we're going to say that the operation that Jeffrey Epstein was the hub of, before he died, Jared Kushner had taken that hub. You know what I mean? Whereas Epstein was the manual hub where you had to have the physical hardware. Jared Kushner, right now, we are walking with our dirt in our pocket. You know what I mean? I don't have my phone immediately in my space, but that's what they're doing. They're looking at everybody's phone in real time. They don't need to plant you next to a hooker. They see they see your trans porn while you're talking about hating trans people. You know what I mean? And that's Palantir and that's all that. Yeah, so I'm gonna dip out. Read my stuff. Nick G, a dude on the couch. Me, I'm Nick G. This is my couch. If you plant me, I grow. If you're gonna believe in something, why not believe in me?